want to just sort of run through the devices?
Yeah, no problem, Paul. So, several types of devices and sizes. So what we've got here is the standard pacemaker, very small, very thin, leads connecting to the top there, and the can here houses the battery and the circuitry. We then move on to the defibrillators. Obviously they're a little bit bigger. The can is considerably bigger, as you can see, but that's just to house the bigger capacitor and the battery needed to restart someone's heart. So compared to that, you can see a size difference. Some of the different shapes and sizes from the manufacturers, they vary in shape and size. At the end of the day, I've never seen an issue with it for someone having a different shape or a different size. Obviously, thin people, it makes a bit of a difference to us, and we do use a certain type of device, but on the whole, these slide just underneath the skin and do a great job. If you didn't see it and you wanted to see it again, the tiny newer type of technology, which is only about a year old, is the leadless pacemaker, which gets injected inside to the heart. Pretty nice, sits there and lasts a similar time, around 8 years for a pacemaker.
So it gets injected, there's no incision at all?
No incision, so it's you go through the leg, so it's a different procedure. Instead of going up in the chest area up here, it goes in with a big tubed catheter. We find the right position, and essentially you just deploy it like a small injection type thing. The tines here, if you can kind of see it, are little grappling hooks, and for the geeky people out there, I know there's a couple of you out there, it's made of nitinol. These tines are 4.5 times the strength required to actually sit inside the heart. And they're essentially just like grappling hooks. Really cool. The future of the technology, I would imagine it's going that way in the next 10 to 20 years. I imagine defibrillators may even get that way as well, which would be pretty nice, I think.
And you also had there had been some questions in the group about home monitors. Some people didn't seem to know what they were and how to use them, because they just didn't get one, perhaps, or didn't bother reading the instruction manual. But perhaps you just sort of quickly run through those as well.
Yeah, no problem, Paul. So there's several types of home monitors, and it depends on who makes your device as to what one you get. Again, I always liken it to having a telephone. There's lots of different companies out there. They're all a mobile phone at the end of the day, but they call things slightly different, and they do it in a slightly different way. One will have proper keys, one will just have a screen, you'll have a different charging point, etc. And the home monitors are exactly the same. So the first one is a monitor made by Boston Scientific. It's very small, as you can see. There's only one button, which helps with patient adherence, and there's a couple of connections in the back. At my centre at Basildon, we find these incredibly useful because it's got a GPS module inside it. So essentially, this has got a mobile phone inside it. It's got the SIM card. As a patient, you don't have to pay for having one of these devices. They come as kind of part of the bundle, and depending on what centre you attend or where you had your device implanted, you could be capable of having one of these. They're not for everyone. At the minute, it's only for ICD patients in Essex where we do it. Other centres around the UK may have slightly different practices, but we find it's useful for our ICD patients. Now, as I said, there's a GPS, a mobile telephone link inside it, so you don't need to plug this into your telephone line. You don't need to plug it into your Wi-Fi router. You put this next to your bed, and you have to do a simple setup. The manufacturers have different processes for setting it up, and so there'll be some slightly different stages, but essentially it takes about 10 minutes, if that, to set it up. And all you do is set it up once, and then you forget about it. So for Boston, you press the heart button. For one of the other manufacturers, Medtronic, they have this device, and as you can see, they're very similar but slightly different. Again, this just has a mouse unit, as we call it, which you put over your device. If it was there, it communicates with your device. You then put it back The nice one about the Medtronic is that it has it on the screen. Now, unfortunately, it's not like going to a mobile phone shop. You can't choose what device you get. We take it for granted that we're the experts, and so we tend to choose your manufacturer. Lots of different hospitals have different contracts with different suppliers and different prices. Now, pacemakers can range from £500–600. The top of the range ICDs go up to about £18,000. So we're talking about a lot of money. So at the end of the day, we're in the best possible position to let you know what one we're going to give you, and obviously, being the current climate, we need to get the best out of our devices and the best bang for our buck, essentially. So, you know, we're quite lucky. We've got some clever people in our purchasing department who are able to do deals and get the prices down on these devices. So you can't choose your device. It'd be lovely. Maybe in the future you could, but for the meantime, you're kind of stuck with who you get. But they all work in the same way. There isn't one manufacturer that personally, as someone that uses it on a day-to-day basis, that I wouldn't have as if I was a patient or one of my relatives was having them, for example. What's interesting though is that in the future, these will be replaced. So,
by what?
So technology is rapidly evolving, and we all know that. We all have mobile phones. I think the statistics are something like 70% of people have a smartphone nowadays. I've just been in Chicago for an international conference, and I've been lucky enough to talk to some of the manufacturers, and they're all going to smartphone apps. So it's currently not available in the current devices, but in the next coming years, all the manufacturers will be switching towards their Bluetooth-enabled devices. So it's really, as I said, I'm a geek, so please excuse me, but it's quite exciting that, you know, instead of having these at home, patients are going to have these connected with them, you know, on their phones all the time. So this will hopefully improve patient adherence, because we do have some issues with people not quite getting the technology, not understanding how it works, not fully committing to looking after themselves, quite honestly. And so everyone tends to take their phone everywhere nowadays. It's very rare that someone won't take their phone, and the devices will communicate to the app and send us the information.
Will the user be able to see that? So would you be able to use it in place of like a Fitbit, a supercharged Fitbit or heart rate monitor?
It's interesting. I mean, you're not necessarily going to be able to track your heart rate and see what's going on with your heart rate. What it will do though is that it will enable you to see that the home monitor's working, because we get a lot of calls and questions. Is my home monitor working? I've had a power cut. Is it doing what it should be doing? You know, or I've had a moment, and you know, totally we understand how distressing that can be when you've had one of these devices in. But the apps will be able to let you know that it's in communication, and you should then be able to answer a few questions before it sends us that information. So if you just wanted to send some information because you didn't know it was working, it should restrict you from sending it, because it will already let you know that it's in communication. And then that will help free up our time, because a lot of our time is spent sieving through lots of transmissions. And it's interesting, we didn't realise that this would be a problem when it first came out. And as I mentioned, it's the same problem around the world. Talking to colleagues in the UK, in the States, Australia, Canada, we're all dealing with all these transmissions that come through, because sometimes someone's not sure if they've had an event or if it's in communication. So if we can free up our time, then we're better suited to see you guys more often.
So how many transmissions a day do you get?
Now, we have around 2,500 patients at Basildon, which is quite a sizable number. We have around about 10 to 20 transmissions that we don't need to see, unfortunately. So I spend about half an hour in the morning sieving through this. If people haven't been in communication to say, hey, I had a funny moment, I've sent a transmission, is there an issue? You know, and people will just press your heart button, and they'll just go, there you go, I feel better, I sent the transmission, they'll be in touch with us. What maybe you don't understand is that if there is any issues with your device, it will send us that information, and it will do it overnight generally, because most people should be asleep in their bed, and obviously unless you're a shift worker, or you like to go out and party. I'm not sure. Me, I'm in bed by 10 o'clock most nights, I'll be honest. So find me pretty reliably, but it comes through to us, and then we can see it in the morning, and then we action it. That's when we phone people up.
Mm-hmm.
So we say, how you feeling, Mr. Jones?
So when should people press that button?
So people should ideally, they should phone us up first.
Right.
You know, it may be different at different centres and different hospitals. Our policy is just give us a call. You know, we are Monday to Friday 9 to 5. So out of hours, if it's an emergency, you get yourself to your local A&E. But if it's not an emergency and it can wait, then give us a call, leave a message, or call back again. And as I said, if it has something to send to us, it will do it without you even knowing, so that it takes that pressure off the patients,
Mm-hmm.
and we only get the right stuff coming through essentially.
Okay. And what point would a patient get one of those home monitor systems? Because I remember, I don't think I got one to about 6 months after I had the ICD. Is that your standard practice?
So there's been recent studies out there, and obviously all our practice is evidence-based. We're quite unique, I think, in the UK, that we don't just put things in because it looks good. We're very much evidence-based, and so it's taken a bit longer to filter through. The process at Basildon is that you should get your device around 4 weeks after your implant. So when you first come back to your first check-up with us, we check your wound, we see how you are, make sure the device is working as it should be, and then that's when we'll have that conversation about, would you like a home monitor? And it's not a hard sell. I personally think they're great things. Yes, it's a little bit of extra work for us, but in the long term, we get great results.
Mm-hmm.
People feel safer. So about 4 weeks. Some centres may give them out at the time. In the States, because most of their patients stay in overnight, they do it the next day and give it to them. Some of the studies that have come out recently have documented and shown that patient adherence is greatly improved the sooner you give it out. So nowadays it's pretty much, we're giving you the consent forms at your post-implant check after the procedure, we're telling you about home monitoring, we're telling you how great it is,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not sowing that seed essentially, but we're letting you know so that you've got time to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to give you something that you're not going to use, because that means I'm going to be phoning you up going, it's not connected, it's not working, is everything okay?
Yeah.
For you to go, oh, I don't like the thing,
Mm-hmm.
put it in a cupboard, I prefer to come and see you in clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fair enough. Some people prefer that face-to-face contact. The real advantage is in between checks. It sends us that information so much quicker. The quicker we can action that and jump on it, the happier you're going to be as a patient, because the potential for serious consequences to occur in between can happen. You know, we do our best to see you, but we can't see you every day. These devices were able to send us that information.
I would go a touch further than that. I think that what we also know is that when you have an arrhythmia, there are often days or weeks before that where you've got this sort of pro-arrhythmic state, and you see sort of lots of ectopics or lots of other signs that maybe there's a bit of instability coming up. And if you pick that up really early, then potentially we can then change medicines to maybe suppress that all the way.
No, definitely.
And then potentially it just allows us to be a bit more on the ball, I think, on a sort of, if we need to be to get those medicines just right to prevent events, rather than it doing what it's supposed to, which is fine, but it's nicer if we can get the tablets really optimised to prevent that. And I've certainly been doing that a lot more over the last sort of 6 months or so, which is something I wasn't really doing before, that I wasn't asked those questions.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So
I mean, it's
that's a
interesting.
palpable change.
I mean, Tom brings up a really good example. Most of the devices will have certain features in them that can, it's like predicting the lottery results, in all fairness. They can sense when there's going to be potentially a change in someone's status where they may be slightly declining, which may lead to some episodes where, you know, their heart just goes to the races, and we can see that in some patients. And as Tom rightly said, the quicker we can get in there and action them, the better. And you know, Tom's seen it, I've seen it on numerous occasions, and it's really helpful. And sometimes some people are amazed that I could tell that they were starting to get more short of breath, that they weren't doing as much exercise. And it's not us being peeping Toms and keeping an eye on everyone with a big brother attitude. It's just your devices will sometimes let us know that issue is about to occur. and prevent you from having a hospital admission, prevent you from having a shock, prevent from people just falling down. In all honesty.
We've got a couple of questions that I could just go on. One person says he doesn't have a home monitor. Do most people have one?
It's becoming more and more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it. Some of the older generation devices, because technology has changed so dramatically, it's fascinating and so exciting because it's so dynamic. It's changing month by month, week by week in some cases. Some of the old devices don't have that capability to follow up your remote, your ICD in a remote way. All the ones that we buy at our centre now have the capability. If you've got an older device, it may mean that when it comes to your box change, as we call it, or your generator change, where we change the defibrillator, that the new one you get, then yeah, we'll be giving you one. We don't have any issues with that.
So if this chap's had it for a while and he hasn't been offered one, should he ask his hospital whether he could have one?
We're a special breed, us cardiac physiologists. We're not unlike doctors because we're quite caring, and we have different demands as people like Tom might have, but we're quite easy to talk to. You see us every 3-6 months, maybe every year at the most, and it's always worth just asking if your device you can have a home monitor. I always say there's no harm in asking, and if they say, oh, maybe you should have had one, then you've got a bonus. And if they say, oh, yours doesn't work, or if it's a different centre and they say we don't follow these up remotely, then unfortunately you're a little bit unlucky. But there's no harm in asking.
And there's another question. Do you still check if you deem them as unnecessary reports? I think it's the downloads that you...
So the devices will they come with like an alert status. So it kind of flashes red essentially, or amber. And if there isn't anything wrong, there won't be anything there for us. There'll be stuff there to view, but we won't be seeing any episodes. So it gives us a list of if someone's had any episodes, if someone's had a shock, for example, and it lets us know on that front screen. So we don't get us wrong, we flick through them. But if there's nothing on there and then no one's phoned up, then we're not wasting our time as such, but it's not a good use of time.
So it certainly helps if someone phones up.
Definitely, in my experience, there's nothing more frustrating than wondering, is this patient okay? I wonder why they've sent us something. Because some people may feel they've had a shock, called an ambulance, and they've said, oh, you're fine, or gone to A&E, and then they send us a transmission, and we can reassure you. You phone us and say, I've done it, I think I've had a shock, and we can go, no, you've been fine. Maybe something else, see your GP, or you've had a shock. How they're looking after you in hospital or in A&E.
Okay, thanks for all that. I think we'll sort of go on to some of the questions now that people have submitted and we've picked up from the previous webinar that we had.